Hello, and welcome to another episode of Social Workers Rise. It is your host, Catherine here. So, we are here with a very special guest, Lakita Brooks. She's an LCSW and very talented, has her hand in a lot of different areas of social work. She's the owner of the Social Work Incubator and the author of the Social Work Career Mapping Curriculum. She uses her voice and love for writing editorials, blog posts, and social media content to bring awareness to social work licensing standards, career mapping for social work students, and income diversification for therapists. Lakita's mantra is you can make money and make a difference. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Catherine. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm really excited. So, okay, I have to tell you, you really got my attention on LinkedIn because last year or December, November, whatever, we came out with the episode 193, the licensing compact, because there's been updates in 2024, and I'm all stoked on this episode. Like, yeah, I'm a huge fan of this compact, right? And then Lakita comes out on LinkedIn and tags me. She's like, you got to listen to this podcast episode with Catherine. And I am definitely against the social work compact. I was like, oh shit, what is she going to say? What did I do? Am I going to, like, is this going to cause some kind of drama? But no, it's good drama because you really brought attention to areas that I hadn't considered fully. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation around essentially the greater implication. Why can I not say this? Greater implications. There we go. The greater implications of the social work compact. So if you are not familiar with what I'm talking about, you're going to have to go back to episode 193 and listen. It's essentially, in a nutshell, where if you are licensed in your state, then if your state is part of this compact, then your license is valid and recognized in all of these other states, and currently 22 states as of the recording date have opted in. So let's talk about this, Lakita.
Yes. So, Catherine, I was so happy to see your episode. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going on my walk. I have to listen. So I listened and I listened some more and I listened some more. And I was like, okay, they did a really great job, very high level. But it's like, hey, let's get into the meat and potatoes about this. And I would just say, in theory, I'm like, oh my gosh, the compact is an amazing idea. I love the idea. I will say, in reality, I don't necessarily like the idea because it's kind of like a marriage. When you get married to someone, you want to be equally yoke. You want to be on the same page. You want to be on the same accord. You want to have, I guess, the same goal in mind. Well, the challenge with social work is that, as we know, across state lines, our acronyms are different. You have the LCSW, the LICSW, the LMSW, the LSW. It's just so confusing. So it's like, on a very baseline, the states are not on one accord. And then, to make matters even worse, right now, you have states who've enacted legislation like Illinois' Public Act 103 433, where now licensed clinical social workers can diagnose human beings in real life who failed their national test as long as they do supervision hours. But then I live in a conservative state that's like Florida, and they're like, I don't think we're going to do that. We're still going to require some type of test. Now, what it's going to look like, I'm not sure, but they're on like two opposite ends. It's kind of like, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it, Trump and Harris getting married.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yikes. That's a scary picture.
Very. And that's how I view this compact, because it's like we're all getting married together to be in this compact, to be in unity, but on the very baseline of what should be a clinical social worker with the clinical authority to diagnose human beings.
Yes, yes. And I will say, so I I'm not an expert in this policy, right? But I've seen in the streets of Instagram all of the dialogue because there's been the conversation around the national exam being racist and ageist. And so Illinois is responding over here like, all right, we saw that this exam is not equal. It's essentially preventing people from entering the field when we have a shortage of social workers already. So let's figure out how to kind of do away with the exam. And there's people on both sides where they're like, yes, let's do this because I hate that exam. I've taken it 9 times. I'm not a better social worker because of it. So done. But then there's other people on the other side where we're saying, oh, well, do we, so that means there's like no test for you as far as, because there's things that you need to know, right? Like laws and I don't, whatever. I'm not talking about the test, but there's like there's a lot of things that you like need to know to do this, right? Confidentiality, HIPAA, all those things. So I don't know what the answer is my question. I see both sides.
Yeah, and trust me, I understand. I did not pass the licensed clinical social worker test until my third attempt, so I get it. So I am a minority who struggled. So first I just want to say that also I'm not in love with ASWB. So it's not even about ASWB, it's about simply having a standard. The literature states that we can have a jurisprudence exam, and that is a more equitable exam, so that could be an option. They even talked about oral exams and other things, which probably be like too costly, but a jurisprudence exam would definitely be a healthy alternative where you still have an exam and it's based on maybe the ethics, like following what the National Association of Social Workers ethics are. So ASWB, the disparities, I get it, it's wrong. It is unfortunate that they pretty much blatantly just lied and said, hey, no, we don't know the outcomes. And then I think it was just a series of things that happened in life. We had George Floyd. Then we had the push for DEI. Then the ASWB finally admitted, oh, by the way, there's disparities. The NASW was like, we don't like ASWB anymore, even though we've been in cahoots from the beginning. We don't like you anymore. So then from that, you had NASW chapters doing their own thing. Once again, you have a state like Michigan where they're going to do a state specific exam. But then you have a state like Illinois, Wisconsin, I want to say Minnesota and Oregon, and they're like, let's get rid of the exam altogether. And I'm simply saying there needs to be a standard to have the clinical authority to diagnose. So I'm not really particular about what type of exam. It just needs to be some type of exam. And just to take it a step further, also for macro social workers who are doing macro non-clinical work, they should not, I'm going to repeat, they should not be required to pass a licensing exam. Because think about it. You have tons of people with masters in public health degrees who are excelling, doing well in leadership roles, and they don't require licensure. And to me, that should be the same. So it's like really social work on a global scale, we need to up level. We need to rebrand and just say MSWs are enough. And if you want to become clinical, then do that. But instead, they've taken the route of let's make everybody clinical just so they can have options and opportunities. But the real issue is social work doesn't have this own brand, and we haven't like drew a line and saying this is who we are, this is what we do, this is what we represent, and this is our value proposition to the world. So no, we don't need to have an LCSW to prove our leadership. No, our MSWs are already equipped. They're already enough. And if you want to be clinical, then do this. So that's a whole larger issue on why the push for the LCSW, because they're like, well, we want to increase pay. And another way they could have addressed workforce shortages was to just up level the current licensed master social workers, grandfather them to become an LCSW. So there were like a lot of other alternatives than to go from, Trump to Harris. Like there was a midway point that we could have chosen, but NASW Illinois didn't. And that's also an issue, the fact that it's all National Association of Social Workers, yet they're all drumming to their own beat. And it's like, wait a minute, you have a national association who stated you oppose something, but they never came back to give a wish list on what they propose, which is also the issue. So it was kind of like, to me, if you could take a stance to oppose something, you need to also propose what do you think your chapter should do. Not saying they will, because every state, has their own rules, regulations, but they should have been given some guidance and not just the free for all. However, I'm feeling, let me take my anger and just say no exam. And you're diagnosing human beings.
Ooh, that's a lot. There's a lot going on that you just said. Listener, I hope you were taking notes because I was taking notes over here. So, first off, if you want to learn more about the disparities in the exam, I did an episode back in 2022 when it first came out. So, it's episode 98. You're going to have to scroll back a while. It's called Why the ASWB Passing Rates Matter. So, go ahead and look at that. You can get more history on what we're talking about as far as the disparities go. I will say, though, I hear you on what you're saying. I will say, though, I like that the compact is requiring a national exam. The problem is our industry is so up in the air about what that exam looks like. So essentially, Illinois has disqualified themselves from even being part of this compact because there is no national exam that their social workers are passing. So that'll be interesting. But I don't, I think there's so many different ways, right? Because you talked about increased pay, how we're all on different pages. So I do like that the compact has specific requirements for the states to be in. It is interesting that you can join as a BSW, MSW, or a clinical. So there's just so many things about it. So many things. But I'm wondering, okay, because we're talking about the greater implications here. And I know you have a lot of thoughts around what would happen when this goes into effect. What do you think will happen when this, because it's going to happen. That's my bet. It's going to happen. It's going to go into effect. Maybe 2026 is my guess. What do you think?
That's a great question, Catherine. I'm not sure what's going to happen once the compact actually takes place. What I will say is just other implications outside of the compact. If we don't have a licensing standard, it makes me wonder, will social workers still be able to bill for psychotherapy services? Will the LCSW license have a lesser weight than the LPC and the LMHC and the LMFT? And I will say, Minnesota, interestingly, they've already joined the compact and they're in the process of deregulating the social work profession. So that's going to be even more interesting to see, because you have all these different states who are like, yay, I want to join the compact, or they've already joined the compact. And then on the back end, they're like, well, we've joined the compact and now we're going to remove the testing standards. So I know a lot of social workers are going to be excited. I just, my thing is, I'm creating a space to bring awareness to the issues. And I am a firm proponent of social work students and making sure they map out their careers and being intentional and not solely depend on what the LCSW will be able to do for them in the future. Get clear around that. And even when it comes to therapists, hey, don't leave your faith in NASW, social work, ASWB, no one. Like, you need to diversify your income. Not saying anything will happen, because some people are like, well, Akita, you're fear mongering. And it's not about fear mongering, but if we look at our world and the society that we live in, every single profession that bills insurance, they pass an exam. Now, whether social work is going to be so revolutionary and they're going to say, it's okay, social workers are great, you help people, you change the world, you don't need an exam, that could happen. But then the opposite could happen was, okay, you all don't want to pass an exam. Now we have more ethics complaints, more malpractice claims, more misdiagnosis. LCSWs, that's okay. We're going to leave it to the people who go to school for counseling to diagnose. So it's just so many different moving pieces, so many things. I guess you could say that's probably been brewing for the past 75 years. And now it's all just, come to a head.
Yeah. And one of the risks, in addition to what you had mentioned as far as deregulation, malpractice suits, ethics, I would be really concerned. For me, I'm thinking, because I'm licensed in California, I would be really nervous to join the compact. And now all of a sudden, I'm getting clients from 22 different states with 22 different child protection reporting laws, with different um, there's that reporting law around, minors having sex if they're within certain ages. I don't know, it drove me crazy studying for the exam just for one state. But you have to know all of these things. And in reading the compact language, it says it's up to you to know the laws of that state. And if you mess up, you are putting yourself and your license at a really, really big risk. I don't know. What do you think about that?
That is scary. Hence why I keep saying we actually need a federal system of regulation. Like we need consistent state standards. Like period. Because I can't even imagine being licensed in even 5 different states. And the rules are all different. And then trying to keep track of them. And there's a chance that if you're seeing people virtually, especially, you can have one client at 9 a.m. in California, another client at 10 a.m. in Florida, another client at 11 a.m. in Minnesota, another client, at 12 in Oregon. And to try to remember what's all the rules and regulations, I don't know about you, Catherine, but there would be no way, no how, no way for me to remember. And I would just be hoping on like a wing and a prayer, just not to get in trouble because it's way too confusing. And that's why, even though like doctors and nurses, they technically don't have federal regulations, but they were able to come on one accord and say, hey, we're going to have the same standards across state lines. And that's why with social workers, we don't just need consistent standards for licensure, but even when it comes to practice guidelines, because that in itself, I I would mess up big time, and I would just, like I said, I would just have to be hopeful and just trust the universe is going to protect me and my ancestors. Okay.
Yes, yes, I hear that. And the other thing that comes to mind is supervision. So you can be included in this compact if you're a BSW and MSW. But I'm thinking, because I'm a clinical supervisor too. So if there's an MSW that I'm supervising and their client is out of state, oh my gosh, this just sounds like it's such a pain. Because now it's my license on the line, right? Like they're an MSW trying to get their license, but and I don't know. I don't know. And we're totally picking this apart. If you want to hear all the good things, go back to episode 193. We talk about all the good things back there. Um, Man, but yeah, just so much to be aware of. So many just greater implications, as we said earlier. Um, it sounds ultimately like social work just needs to get on the same page and get their stuff together. We're just kind of a hot mess.
Much a hot mess that's building a home on top of mud. Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Time will tell. I have a feeling we will be back on the podcast together having this conversation in a year, talking about all the drama that has ensued in 2025. But ultimately, overall, I'm here for it because it is a step forward. It is a conversation that needs to be happening, and it is something that's needed, that we just need to figure out what the heck we're doing and how to do it.
Exactly how to do it and how to do it to where it's going to be sustainable. So then in 5, 10, 15 years, we still have a profession because your podcast is called Social Workers Rise. Where are we rising to if we don't even have a profession anymore because we've completely deregulated everything for the sake of equity and fairness? And there's a lot of other ways to have equity without the whole deregulation process. We don't have to be so extreme in our thoughts.
Yes, yes. Come together. I love the conversation, Lakita. I love the different perspective. And I love that you are also serving social workers. So you had mentioned off air about your social work career mapping services. What is that? I'm not very familiar. So if you can what is it? Tell me about it.
Yeah, so social work career mapping is basically designed to support social work students with having guidance. Because the good thing about social work is that we can diversify. Our skills are so transferable with so many things. And that's also the weakness. So it's an online on demand asynchronous course where I contract with social work degree programs, deans, program directors on offering this curriculum at their school. So then when social work students leave school, it's not just about having the academics. They're also ready to practice, have a great quality of life, make a difference, be ready for leadership roles. Because in this day and time, especially with inflation, a degree is not enough, and just winging it in college is not enough. We need to be intentional. We have to have a plan, and that's what this curriculum does for them.
I love that. And when you say leadership roles, I'm assuming you're meaning, macro roles included in that.
Oh, yes, macro roles and also clinical roles. Because yes, if you want to, be in a leadership role in a clinical setting, then by all means, you should pursue your LCSW. But for those who just desire micro roles, like being a director over social services or things of that nature, or even when it comes to policy or working with the government, you simply need your MSW degree, and it will prepare them for that. Because the thing is with career mapping is you're going to school to get your degree, right? But then you also have things you need to do. You need to be intentional with picking the right internship or field placement, as some schools call it, building those relationships, leveraging those things, building your resume, taking the right courses, taking additional professional development, joining organizations, because we live in a world, unfortunately, and a lot of times it's about who you know and not what you know. Sometimes, you could luck up and still get the opportunity and not know anyone, but it's a series of things that you need to do while you're still in school to make sure you have a smooth transition. Because I think that's part of the reason we have so many social workers out there about 3 years. They're like, you know what, I'm bitter, I'm broke, and I'm burnt out, and I'm leaving the workforce. Hence, why we have the workforce shortages. Hence, Illinois' decision to remove the exam. So it's just a ripple effect. So we catch students while they're still in school and equip them and give them a plan so they can transition and have a great career while also making a difference and knowing what they want to do. Then it's a win-win on all fronts for the schools and then even for our profession, because we have a shortage because people keep leaving because they didn't figure out how to actually have a fulfilling career while you can make money and make a difference. And we're getting rid of the whole we just do it for the love and we're going to be martyrs. Like, we can't do that in this world because the cost of living is like way too high. My mortgage company never asks, Lakita, how many people did you help? No, they want money. And that's the life we live.
Yeah, and it is just getting more and more expensive. Definitely reach out to Lakita if that social work mapping program sounds like it'd be something good for your school, for your program. If you're not 100% convinced, go back and listen to episode 194 and 195, because I talk about the different areas of social work and essentially what the trends are in 194, how to prepare for them. And in 195, what are the top paying social work careers that are kind of top of mind in 2025. And leadership and macro was mentioned in both of those episodes. So it is a trend and it is a rising field, a rising area for social workers to get into. And I would say not even just in nonprofits or in government, but also in the corporate sector too, that they're starting to recognize the value that we bring to every place that there are humans at. You need a social worker there, which speaks to the other thing that you were talking about off air is the marketing of social work. We need to get better at marketing ourselves and essentially just communicating what it is that we do and how exactly do we help, instead of just coming in like, oh yeah, I'm just a social worker, I will just pitch in wherever we can. Like, that's not really doing us justice. We need to get really good at knowing our strengths and being able to communicate that to people outside of social work so that we can have greater impact and also make that money.
Exactly.
So, all right. It was a great conversation, Lakita. How can people get in contact with you?
Oh, that is a great question. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn at Lakita Brooks. That's a great way to connect. And if you like to know more about social work career mapping, you can go to socialworkcareermapping.com.
And open up the show notes. You will see both of those links right there. Go ahead, connect with her on LinkedIn, send her a message, say, hey, I want you to come to my school. What do we do? Let's get it started. So If this episode was helpful for you, please go ahead and share it, text it to a friend. We are not about gatekeeping of information around here. I hope so. I'm so grateful for you, Lakita. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you, Catherine, for the opportunity and for helping social workers to rise.
Bye. See you later.